everybody. This is Honey Pat. You're welcome to my kitchen. And this is our spiritual, part of our spiritual family. Reverend PJ is the cameraman.
Yay! All right.
And Connie is my clean up after me man. So anyway, welcome. Tonight we're going to be making beef, barley, and mushroom soup. However, it has a name. We named it because of my son-in-law, John. Whenever all the kids come and gather, I always make something in the crock pot so that no matter what time people float in, there's something to put in their bellies, they can have it. So John was here and he was out making business calls, and he usually comes in about 9 o'clock at night. And so I had this stew in the crock pot. And he took it, served himself, sat down at the table, and he started eating, and he said, "Oh my God, I think I hear the angels sing." And I'm thinking to myself, it's stew, you know. And he proceeded to get several more helpings. So from that point on, this has been called the angels sing stew. But you can judge for yourself when you make it.
All right. I will do that.
The first thing that I do, because it is a crock pot dish, I get all the stuff ready in the crock pot first and turn it on so that can be heating and it gets a quick start. So.
And do you turn it on high or low?
I have it on high.
Okay.
Once it begins to bubble, then I may turn it on low depending on which crock pot I use. You know your crock pot, you just do what your crock pot tells you to do.
Okay.
Okay, so what do you put in there?
Okay, what I put in this, and I do this mainly because I'm real efficient about my movements. I just put in the liquid, or some of the liquid. So this is a quart of beef broth, or beef stock if you can get it. So we'll put that in there. Also, I peeled 3 carrots, and they were pretty long. I might be putting 4 in, 3. It's stew. Use your own judgment, and you can add the things that you like.
Carrots, potatoes.
So this is 3 carrots. Put that in there. 2 bay leaves. Some thyme. I'm putting in about a teaspoon.
Okay.
Sometimes I get it from my garden, but it was raining and I didn't want to go out. And then I put in about a tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. And then I'm putting in some barley. I use barley a lot in my soups. And then I alternate because my husband prefers cubed potatoes. So you could eliminate the barley and you could peel 2 potatoes, cube them up, and put them in. But I'm going to put about 3/4 of a cup. This is a half cup measure, so I'm going to put that in, and about half of that. So we're going to let that go. Bubble, bubble, toilet trouble.
You put the lid on it?
I will later. And yeah, when we're ready to shut her up.
Okay, so you can move over, Kenny.
So now we're going to come over here and we're going to cook the meat. And one of the reasons that we do this when you're cooking a stew is that when you brown the meat, it seals in the juices, so that makes the meat more tender and keeps it from getting tough and stringy. And the flour serves as a thickening agent, so rather than thicken it later, we do it then. So what I have here is a cup of flour, and I'm going to add to it about a teaspoon. If you don't like spicy things, you may want to take less, but it really makes a difference in the flavor. So let's put about a teaspoon of that stuff in there.
And what is that stuff? What's the seasoning?
This is Tony Chachere's Cajun seasoning.
Oh, Cajun seasoning. All right.
So there's many brands and they're very similar. So if you don't have this, you probably have some other Cajun seasoning on hand. So we're gonna stir that up so that'll be distributed throughout. And then when I toss the meat in the flour, I like to use this instrument. It's called a spider.
Oh.
And you'll see why.
Where do you find the spider?
I found this on the wall at Central Market.
And what's the meat that you're putting in?
Beef stew meat.
So that's what it is? It's already cut up? Beef
Yeah.
stew meat. Okay.
Now sometimes when if I just do this and it's only for Glenn and I don't do it in the crock pot, I do it in a small saucepan, and I get they have beef already portioned out into little strips at Costco, and I get those and freeze them separately, and I just take one of those strips and cut it and cube it, because that's enough stew for my husband and I, because after all, there's just so much stew you can stand. So look at this. Can you see this? How we're tossing this meat in here?
That's wrong.
It is getting thoroughly coated. I don't have to get my hands dirty.
Good.
And here's the reason why I use the spider. I take a little bit and I sort of shake it. See how that's shaking? And you don't have to get an excess of flour in there.
Okay.
So we're going to cook that for a little while,
How long is a little while?
till it gets brown on the outside. It doesn't matter because it's going to go in the crock pot and cook for 4 hours.
Okay.
So you're not going to die. Here, see? All that flour's gone off. Now I'm going to save this flour because in a little bit we're going to take the meat out and put it on a plate and saute the rest of the vegetables that go in there.
Okay.
So we're going to let that, can you see that one?
Beautiful.
Okay. So we're going to let that cook. Just stand here a little while and let it cook. Now, when I was preparing for this and thought about, I made this stew. It's a stew that I make all the time. It's just a utilitarian dish that you don't think anything about it. Everybody in the planet has a stew recipe. It's just a go-to recipe. Everybody fixes it differently. But yet, my son-in-law came in and thought it was the greatest thing ever. So what that brings home to me is that we don't know how we are angels unaware, just doing something that we normally do.
Right.
If we hold the door open for someone
Yes.
elderly, older than me, of course,
Of course.
or just smile at a stranger, or offer the census taker like David a glass of water. Those are just things that are second nature to us. And we don't know how that may affect someone.
Right.
You don't know when you're on the elevator, if you say something that is speaking to you to say something kind to a stranger on the elevator, you don't know, but what you have been the one to stop that person from committing suicide because you cared enough to speak to them. I know Reverend PJ talked about how she was in Bed Bath & Beyond. I'll never forget this story. And she was there, and it was Christmas time. People were waiting in line to get their gifts. And there was a lady there that was just, tears were just rolling down her face. And Reverend PJ didn't know what the problem was. But she walked silently up beside her, took her by the hand and held her hand until she felt like the moment of need was past. Didn't say anything and walked on. Now I know that changed that woman's life. So I'm going to move this now and let it cook over here because I have one already ready. like to keep a glass lid on things when I'm cooking that's flatter, because you can still see how they cook, and it doesn't get all over your splatter on your arms or anything. Okay. Now here's the one that I've already cooked a little bit. And that looks good to me. I'm going to take that out. Thank you, Connie. This is why we need Connie.
One of the many reasons.
So I'm just going to take this out, put it on the plate. And set it aside. Now you notice that I have not thrown away my flour because I'm going to use a little bit of it in a minute. I've had some oil in here, the meat sucked it all up, so I'm going to add some more. It's olive oil that I had in there. I want to have enough to saute the vegetables. So in here I have 1 onion, 5 cloves of garlic, and we're going to saute those. Now, you'll notice that I have this wooden spoon that has a flat edge. In the sink. Thank you. And the reason why I prefer this over anything else is because you can scrape up the bits. When you add that back into your stew, it's a lot of flavor. So this way I can scrape up the bits without damaging my pan. Okay, those onions and the garlic, the 5 cloves of garlic are cooked. Now I'm going to add in the mushrooms. I just got a small box of mushrooms. And we're going to let that cook a little while. Till the mushrooms sort of cook down and begin to release their liquid. The other thing I wanted to tell you about, if you'll notice that these little onions are chopped up real fine, and the reason I do it that way is because the smaller the pieces of onion are in this, the more flavor they emit.
Oh.
It's not being hoarded within a clunky piece of onion. Yeah. You know, the thing about you don't know how you're being used as an instrument. This is my personal belief. I believe that we are each like crystals that God can use to emit, just like the radio waves in the old-timey radios, and they have little crystals in them. I think that that's what we are as spiritual beings. Maybe not necessarily as a physical being, but as a spiritual being, we are absorbing what we understand God to be, what we understand the goodness of God, and then that goes through us and radiates out to others. So that's why in the first time that we did this cooking show, I admonished everybody, be sure that when you're cooking, you're doing it with love.
Oh, yes.
Don't be resentful when you have to cook. If you have to be resentful, get a Stouffer's frozen lasagna for God's sake. Because this is really a very vivid energy that you're putting into the food.
Very good. Excellent.
So you see how I'm scraping that up?
Yeah.
Okay. Now comes the flour. I'm going to get about the equivalent of maybe 2 tablespoons of this flour. And remember, it's already been seasoned with that Cajun seasoning. You don't need salt and pepper because in the Cajun seasoning, it's just all salt and cayenne pepper, basically. Now we're going to let that continue to cook as the mushrooms are releasing their liquid. Thank you. Can you see over my shoulder how
Yep, see,
that
beautifully.
flour is just being absorbed?
Yep.
In Cajun cooking, it's called making a roux.
A roux, okay.
And now, we're going to add about a cup of wine. I don't ever cook in the plan that tells you only use wine that you're willing to drink. Don't use some cheap grocery store cooking wine that has salt in it. And this is going to help those bits come up a little more. And get all those scraped up because that's going to bring flavor to your dish. And so you can do this at lunch, put it in the crock pot, walk away, and you're finished cleaning, chopping vegetables. All you have to do is wait for dinner time and serve it up.
All right.
Now see how that wine sauce is beginning to thicken?
Oh, yes, looks like gravy now.
Mm-hmm. That's what I call it. You got to gravy it up. And now, was the thing I think that made the difference when I made the soup for John. I was out of the tomato paste that's in the squirt tube, and I didn't have any tomato sauce. I did have a V8, and so I added the V8, and that seems to be what made the difference in this stew, in the completed flavor.
I never would have thought
Yeah.
to be, but I never would have had that in my house.
That's the thing, me either.
See, it has all these vegetable flavors in it, and
Doesn't V8 have a kick too?
I think
I
there is.
don't
I think there
think
is one that does. Yeah, I don't think the
it
regular
doesn't
one
have
doesn't.
any
No
Hot sauce or something.
yeah. I remember long ago, I had a restaurant, and it was a chain that I had bought a franchise to, and they had a little demitasse cup of a clear broth, and all it was V8 juice, chicken broth, and dill. But it made a very tasty little demitasse cup of liquid, like a real thin broth, but it's very flavorful.
If they drank it,
Yeah, you drank it with a little, in the South, I know all of you have lived in the South, they have these little cheese wafers that have cayenne pepper and pecans. And so it was served with two of those in your little demitasse thing of this broth.
broth with vodka or just.
Just, the broth was chicken broth, V8 juice, and dill.
Okay, all right, interesting.
Now the thing about what wine, and the reason I was anxious to make sure I had tomatoes in the sauce was because wine and or the tomato juice, or any tomato product, breaks down your meat and tenderizes
Oh,
it.
okay.
So
very
now we're
good.
going to put this back in. Make sure you get all the juices from it. Let me get a hot pan.
Oh.
And this is why I didn't put the lid on the crock pot.
Okay, because you bringing it over?
Yeah, because I'm going to take this and go pour this into the crock pot.
Okay.
Crap. Oops, I didn't say that.
Better than anything else.
Okay. Let's scrape it down. I don't burn myself. Ta-da! There you have it. In 4 hours, dinner's ready.
All right. Nice. And that's it?
That's it.
Wow. So cool.
And now
Yay.
I'm going to dip some out, and so you can see what it looks like all finished.
All right.
Because just for you, peoples, I made one ahead of time. And this is why I say there's just so much stew you can eat. Here, let me bring it back over to the downward facing dog camera.
Okay.
There, do you see that?
Hang on. I have to put it over the oven if you want them to see it. Over the stove. That right there.
Okay.
Okay.
And there you have.
Over more.
Well,
To the center of that ring, where you had the pot.
That ring is hot.
Okay, so lift it up so you don't have to sit right on it. There you go.
There you
Perfect.
go.
They can see it really well right there. Yeah. Perfect. That's beautiful. That's what it's
There
going to
you
look
have
like.
it.
That is wonderful.
And there you have the angel sing stew.
Woo! Yay!
Which you can change your vegetables. You can change from barley to potatoes. You're a creative being on this planet. So just however you're inspired is right. There is no wrong way. And there you
It's
have
all perfect and divine.
it. And John Perper,
Here you go.
this is for your chef, because John is going to take this video and give it to the chef at his restaurant so they can have it there in Cherry Hill, New Jersey.
Woo! All right.
I know who that is. Yay!
Thank you. All right, and that is Cooking with Honey Pat.
Yeah.